Our guest on this week's show, we got a man who is a Super Bowl champion, winner of Super Bowl II, Don Horn. Don, how are you?
I'm doing great, Eddie. How are you doing? Merry Christmas to you.
Oh, thank you so much, and same to you and your family. I'm doing great. Really excited to have you on the phone here with us.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. Gosh, just pushing like, God, I got to stop and think. It's almost 50 years ago. Yeah. Holy smokes, now you're making me feel old.
Well, you know, when you got one of those rings, you know, you're an infamous figure, and that's forever, Don.
Yeah, it is. When I got my ring, I think there was a total of about 58 players in the world that had them. Of course, I was at Super Bowl II, and a lot of the same guys on Super Bowl I and II had two of them. In fact, I was with Jerry Kramer yesterday. Had a nice day spent with Jerry. And we were kind of reminiscing about the good old days, and I love listening to his stories. Talking about the Packers and some of the great guys that were there that he played with even before I got up there and caught the tail end of that great era in the '60s.
What an era it was, Don. Let's backtrack for a second. Take us back. You're an LA kid. Take us back to what was your childhood like? What was life like? And when did you fall in love with football and sports in general?
Oh yeah, I grew up in LA. In fact, we used to play on this, in the streets all the time, in neighborhoods and that kind of thing, and loved to play tackle football. And the local park and recreation areas wouldn't let us play, so we had to go. One neighborhood would challenge another neighborhood, and you had makeshift pads and helmets and stuff, and we'd have to go clear out a field somewhere close to a railroad track, get all the broken glass off and the rocks and stuff, and then we'd go play tackle football. So, but I guess I was about 11 years old when I kind of made up my mind that my goal in life was to try to play professional football. And I wish I had we used to say a nickel at that time, but a quarter or a dollar now, whatever, for everybody. Every time somebody told me that you weren't good enough, you were too slow, you were too clumsy, you were too heavy, too fat, whatever, you'll never make it, whatever. But persevere. That's what I wanted to do. And then, I grew up in LA. It was, we had a lot of competition out there. I actually grew up with a kid named Doc Ellis who played for years with the Pirates and the Yankees and some other teams.
Oh, sure. Wow.
Great pitcher. And Doc and I we grew up together, and I always told him, I said, he was a great athlete. He was a great basketball player as well. And he was a pretty good wide receiver. So I always told him he should have been my wide receiver. He should have gone to the pros. But anyway.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. Two professional athletes together like that. That's crazy. That's great.
Yeah. Good memories. Good memories. Yeah. So
Don, who were some of your role models as a kid?
Actually, my role model as a kid, and I grew up in LA in the old Los Angeles Rams, and one of my role models was a quarterback named Norm Van Brocklin. And it's funny, I never met Norm, and growing up in LA and whatever, and then years later, I'm with Green Bay, and we're playing the Falcons up there, and I think it was 1970, I believe, and I go in the game. Sometime in the third or fourth quarter, and it's a pretty tough game, and I think we're behind at the time by 3 or 4 points or something, and anyway, I ended up throwing 89-yard a touchdown pass to Carroll Dale, and right at the end of the game we won the game, and I go up to Coach Van Brock, and he's coaching the Falcons at that time, and he was so upset that they lost the game. And I'm standing there, and he's yelling at his players and kind of cussing them out, getting a little foul mouth with them. And I'm standing there, because I want to meet him. He's my idol. So he's screaming, and he had really a hot head. And then he looked at me standing there, and he said, Horn, you lucky so-and-so, you lucky, you got lucky in that silo. He called it a silo, it was so. Just a long high bar. I think I threw it as high as I did far. and he started yelling and cussing me out. And I said, Coach, he shouldn't talk to me that way. And then he, why not? You lucky SO, whatever. And then I said, because you're my idol. And he looked at me, and he thought I was jerking his chain, and he got more upset. So,
man,
I never really shook his hand. He got so upset. But I haven't thought of that in a long time. But Norm Van Brocklin was my idol growing up. So,
pretty funny. I guess you beat your idol later on.
That's beat my idol, and then I go up to congratulate him or meet him or whatever, and then he yells at me and kind of swears at me and tells me, whatever. So
give you a real piece of his mind, huh?
Yeah, that was Norm. That was Norm. Anybody ever played for him? I know a lot of guys that have over the years, and they stories about him were, he was he could be pretty aggressive and insulting to his players. So.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
That's a funny story there. So let's fast forward a little from your childhood and talk a little bit about college. I know you bounced around a little and you landed at San Diego State.
Yeah. At a high school, I wanted to go to. I was going to go to SC at the last minute. Of course, back in those days, you couldn't. Freshmen couldn't play varsity ball, and my family was. We used to say, kind of a, I guess lower middle class. We didn't have the money. If I was going to go to college, it had to be a scholarship, and I always wanted to go to SC because that's where I grew up, and they were talking to me, and they wanted me to go play there, and then at the last minute, when I was right at the end of my senior year in high school, they called me and they said, no, we want you to go to junior college for 2 years. You get more playing experience, et cetera, which they were right. But it hurt my feelings, had my ego. And so then I decided to go to Washington State, went up there, maybe I had 3 or 4 freshman games. Sophomore year, they fired the coach. They brought in another coach from the University of Washington, a guy named Bert Clark. And we had a big tailback, a guy named Clarence Williams. He ended up playing D1C back for the LA Rams for years. Great athlete, big 6'5", 220, and he could run like the deer. So anyway, spring ball in 64, I guess. I went to spring ball up there in 64. I was just nothing more than a third pulling guard. They wanted me to take a snap, pitch it to Clarence, and then with the 2 guards kind of lead him around either end. And then there was a running back up there from the Chargers named Keith Lincoln, who went to school at Washington State. And he still lives up there today, I believe. But he pulled me aside one afternoon, one spring ball, and he says, Don, he said, you got some talent. You could throw the ball. He said, you got to get out of here, And then he told me about a coach named Don Coryell down at San Diego, loves to throw the ball, et cetera. To make a long story short, then I transferred, went to a junior college, and ended up playing with a teammate of mine here in Denver, a guy named Haven Moses. And we were undefeated, number 2 junior college in the country, et cetera. And then I had offers all over the country after that for my junior and senior year, and I was going to go to Florida State. I committed to go to Florida State right after Steve Tinsley and Blitnikoff had left. And I'm working out one day, and then this guy comes in to me, and he says, hey, Don, there's a guy named Don Coryell sitting in my office, at this junior college, and he wanted to talk to me. I went, Don Coryell, where have I heard that name? And anyway, so I went in, met Coach Coryell, San Diego State, and again, he's, to make a long story short, he says, he wouldn't take no for an answer. He insisted I come down to San Diego for a couple of days. And a couple of days later, he came by, picked me up, drove me down to his office in San Diego. Went in a little bitty 10-by-10 room back then. It was, Division II school. We had minor scholarships. We had to work so many hours a week to earn your books and part of your tuition and stuff. And I walked in his office, and there's kind of a big guy standing in one corner, and there was a D1C coordinator, a guy named John Madden. And there was another guy standing in the other corner who was an assistant coach at that time with the Chargers, San Diego Chargers, named Chuck Knoll.
Whoa.
There was another couple guys. One's Rod Dowhauer. He kind of bounced around, and he coached, a little bit in the pros in college too. And then there was a young kid. He was my roommate for a while. He was a graduate assistant with San Diego State. A young kid named Joe Gibbs. Joe and I ended up living together for a while. Then there was a guy sitting at Coryell's desk I recognized was a coach named Sid Gilman with the Chargers. And after being rushed pretty hard down there with those guys and whatever, after a couple of days later, I called up Florida State, and guess what? I'm going to stay here on the West Coast and go to this little bitty school called San Diego State. And we were next year, my senior year, we were undefeated, national champions, small college, and I believe Al Davis, and even Al Davis used to come down and scout us a lot from the Raiders. And, Al would tell me on more than one occasion, he says, Don, he says, you guys got the best team on the West Coast. We didn't have any depth. For our first 22 or 23, we could stay with anybody in the country, but we didn't have the depth being a small college. But, he says, I know you. He said, trust me, I know what I'm talking about. I scouted UCLA, I scouted SC, Cal, Stanford, University of Washington, Oregon. He says, I scout these guys all the time. I know these teams, and you guys have the best team I've seen on the West Coast. But anyway, yeah. So that's how I kind of went to San Diego State from Washington State. Kind of a long story.
Yeah, that's awesome. What an amazing cast of coaches there, huh?
Oh yeah, it was yeah. They're really talented guys. In fact, there was a funny story when I got there. They were telling me, one of the coaches told me this happened like a year before, I think, when Coach Madden first came down. I think Coach Madden was hoping to get a job with the Raiders in 65 or 64, 65, and it didn't come to fruition at that time. And so another coach with the San Diego State recommended Coryell hire John Madden. So John, they hire him, and he's down there, and he's down there during the summertime, right before, about the time we start our fall practices or two-a-days in the summer in August. And, and he said, Coach Madden's sitting in the office with him one day, and he's down there. He's been down there for a couple of weeks, and he turns to this other coach, a guy named Sid Hall, and he says, Sid, I've been here almost 2 weeks. I'm not sure what Coach Coryell, what kind of defensive philosophy he prefers. What defenses does he like to run? The Okie, the 4-3, the 3-4, or what does he prefer? Do you have any idea? And he said, no. And about that time, Coryell's walking down the hall, and he said, well, let's ask him. Hey, Coach, he says, John Madden here and whatever. Remember John? Yeah, he's defense coordinator. And he said he's just curious. He wants to know what defenses you prefer. And, Coryell talked with a lisp, and, we used to nickname him Daffy Duck. I love the guy. He's one of the greatest guys in the world. And he said, Coach kind of put his hand up to his face and looked in the door, and he says, heck, you just 3 and out. That's all we want. Just 3 and out, John. But that was Coryell's defensive philosophy, was just giving the ball back. Do what you got to do to get the ball back so we can score. And Coryell's offensive philosophy was, score first and score often.
The quarterback, that had to be a dream offense to be in with such an aerial attack philosophy, huh?
Oh yeah, it was. I loved it. I never had somebody. In fact, in the latter part of my career, I ended up backing up Dan Fouts, and then a couple of years later, I retired, and then Fouts, Fouts was just doing so, and then Don Coryell was named head coach of the Chargers. And so I got a hold of Fouts, and I said, get ready, you're going to be reborn. I said, what do you mean? And then, I said, you'll find out. Coryell's coming. And to this day, Dan says the only reason he's in the Hall of Fame is because of Coach Coryell.
Wow.
In fact, he was telling the story one time at Coryell's memorial service a few years ago we had in San Diego, and he says when one of his first games when he played for the Chargers when Coryell was there, Dan goes out. That's a pretty awful first quarter. He throws a couple of picks and some incompletions and just not having a good day. He's not clicking on all cylinders, and he comes to the bench and sits on the sideline and he kind of got his dauber down and kind of sitting by himself. And about that time, he said he notices, Coryell start walking towards him, and he's assuming he's going to get his fanny chewed out and getting yelled at. And he says, Coryell comes up to him and he says, Dan, what's wrong, son? And he says, Coach, I don't know. I just don't have it. I don't know what's, whatever. And he says, oh, heck, don't worry about that. He puts his hand on his shoulder and he says, don't worry about that, Dan. You got 40 more passes to throw. Get back out there. Don't worry about that. And he said, no one ever talked to him that way. He says so he goes back out and kind of turns it around and has a pretty good afternoon, and the rest is history. So,
wow, that's cool. I guess it's got to be great to have a coach to boost your confidence that way. Don, let's move it forward a little. What was it like draft day back then? What was your draft day like back in those days?
Oh, it's totally different than now, Eddie. Totally different. I was actually sitting in a little PR room. I was contacted by 5 or 6 teams, Kansas City, the Chargers, Oakland, Lions, 5 or 6 teams said they're going to draft me, if I was available in the first round. And a lot different back then. They had consortiums. They had scouting, scouting consortiums and stuff where some of these scouting people would share information and things. So they just said, give me a phone number. This one scout, they just need a phone number where they could call you. And so I'm sitting in this little bitty office listening on radio, to the nothing like it is today, man. Today it's
Right.
just a big, it's just, show. But okay, so and so's drafting now. The Lions are drafting and oh yeah, okay, they said they're going to, and they pick Mel Farr. And I'm going, oh, wait a minute, suddenly I realized that some of these guys, when they tell you something in the pros, it's not necessarily true, or, they're going to, they're not going to live up to the word sometimes. So anyway, make a long story short, all these teams that said they were going to draft me, passed me. And, I'm going, well, what the heck, and all these guys, and I'm kind of feeling sorry for myself, and Kansas City's picking, and we're just about the end of the first round, and all of a sudden the phone rings, and, I pick it up, and they said, is this Donald Horn? I said, yes, it is. And she said, this is, I forget her name, Carol so-and-so, Coach Lombardi's assistant. Please hold for Coach Lombardi.
Whoa.
And I thought, I was really upset, man. I thought somebody was really jerking my chain because I hadn't talked to, I almost hung up. And then, of course, Coach Lombardi comes on the phone and you could definitely hear that graspy voice, Donald, yeah. And then, he asked me questions like, we're considering making you our next pick here, and in the first round, and he asked me a couple questions, and if I, and I answered him, and he said, well, Kansas City's picking right now. He says, get back to you in 15, 20 minutes. And then about 20 minutes later, the phone rang, and he says, welcome to the Green Bay Packers, Winky back here and all that stuff or whatever. And then then I find out later on that a lot of the teams I talked to, the Giants and some other teams, shared information and stuff. And because I never even talked to anybody, some of these scouts were scouted, talked to a lot of scouts, and they were scouting for more than one team, I guess. So, and that's, that's the way it was, but nothing, no hoopla, anything like it is today. Back then it was just, when can you get back here, son? So got back right away.
Yeah, it's a real skeptical now, but wow, how amazing. So you get drafted to the defending Super Bowl champions, and you're a young kid, and Vince Lombardi's giving you a call. Wow. Yeah.
And a lot, and then of course after my career and after the fact, a lot of people that are, knowledgeable in football, so to speak, and these supposedly gurus, they say, well, the worst thing that could have happened to you, Don, was going back to Green Bay and that, that very predictable 3 yards in a cloud, in a cloud of dust, Woody Hayes type of approach with the sweep and the off tackle plays and, little play action here, little play action there, not much passing and stuff. And, if I'd have been drafted by the Chargers or some other team in the West Coast where it's warmer and they like to throw the ball more, who knows what could have happened. But, I wouldn't trade my time in Green Bay for anything. I was very fortunate to catch that great era and great bunch of guys and playing for a coach like Lombardi and I wouldn't change a thing. So.
Well, that sounds amazing. I mean, yeah, you go from a widespread pass attack to a completely different offense. But let me ask you this. You're a Southern California kid. How did you adjust to picking up and moving to a place like Green Bay? I mean, was it a culture shock? How did you adjust to the weather change?
Well, definitely culture shock. There's a definite culture shock. But, it was a small town. Everybody knew everybody, and everybody's phone number was in the phone book. They know where everybody lived. And I remember, I was a bachelor there. We had 4 bachelors living there in town. There wasn't a whole lot to do. And I remember one time, everybody, most of the fans in Green Bay would, they were big fans, and come to find out they would tattle on you from time to time, we supposed to have curfew every night, 11 o'clock. I remember one day I was, kind of a rookie, and I'm going out to practice one day, and Coach Lombardi always called me Donald, and he said, Donald, I said, yes, sir, and he called me over, and he said, son, he says, where were you last night? He said, what time did you get in last night? And I'm looking at him, I'm going, oh my gosh, somebody tattled on me, or whatever. And I kind of looked at him a little bit and kind of, and he says, before you answer, I not only know where you were, I know who you were with, and I know what time you got home. Now tell me, where were you? And so you don't know if he's bluffing or not, but you gotta fess up.
Right.
But he did that to pretty much everybody. So, it was funny listening to Jerry Kramer yesterday talk about some of the old stories, that happened before I got up there with some of the other players and stuff. It was, good times, great era, great bunch of guys back then.
Oh, I can imagine that. That's funny.
Yeah, playing in the elements and that ice bowl. Never been so cold in my life. In that ice bowl, I mean, you couldn't believe how cold it was. We had to warm it up to 0 on the sidelines on the bench with the makeshift tarps and stuff, and the heaters blowing in. And guys are coming off the field trying to get warm in 0-degree temperature.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, with the wind chill, what was it like? They said like in almost negative 40s, right?
Well, I mean, Jerry said yesterday he thought it was like 57 below or whatever. I've heard anywhere from 46 or 47 to 58 below. So, who knows? All I know is at kickoff, it was like 13 or 15 below, and then, it got colder after that, about 18 or 19, and then with the chill factor, it was anywhere from 46 to probably 56, 57 below. But it was miserable.
Oh, man. I can't imagine taking a big hit in that weather. Jeez.
Yeah. Well, Zeke and I didn't play in that game. Bart had a hell of a game. In fact, Jerry was talking about it yesterday, talking to some people asked me. He says, he did not know what happened. It was something special. He couldn't identify what it was. It was maybe the Packer mystique or the Lombardi, whatever. But he says, that last drive of 65 yards with 5 minutes to go or 4 something to go in the game. He says the previous 31 plays and the 10 possessions prior to that last drive, the total yardage that the offense gained for the Green Bay Packers was -9 yards. They couldn't do anything. We couldn't do anything in the second half,
Wow.
And we got in that huddle and he said he talking to Bart afterwards years later, and he says, Bart, what made you think, what made you believe that we could drive down that field and score, and Bart told him, he said, well, it was the look in your eyes, Jerry. It was the look in Skoronski's eyes and Forrest Gregg and, Gillingham. And, I looked at you guys in the eyes and I just saw that look that, you guys knew we could do it. And so we found a way to do it. So that was one hell of a drive, I tell you.
Jeez, and you were right there, standing right next to Vince, huh?
Yeah, in fact, I think I was the first one grabbing him. After Bart snuck it in, I'm jumping all over him. If you look at the ESPN, you can't tell who I am because we had the ski mask on and the tire was cold, and I'm jumping all over Vince. I was the first one jumping on him to rest.
That's great.
Geez.
I read that it was so cold that the refs couldn't even use their whistle.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they couldn't. Yeah, they couldn't stick it in their mouth, and the little pea in there froze. They said or whatever, and then they were afraid to put it. That's like that movie. What is it? The Christmas Story.
Oh,
the guy putting the tongue on the metal pole. I double dare you. I dare you. I double dare you.
Oh man, that's great. Fitting for the time of year too, huh? That's great.
Exactly.
Yeah, I also read a linebacker. I don't know if this is a true story or not. Maybe you could confirm. It was so cold, a lot of the, players' cars wouldn't start. I read Dave Robinson, linebacker, had to hitchhike to the game.
Yeah, I think I did hear a story like that. Yeah, some cars wouldn't start. Yep.
Wow.
I always tell people I saw talking to Dan Reeves not too long ago, and I said, we were busy celebrating and stuff afterwards, and but a lot of us Packers time we got in the showers. I mentioned to Dan Reeves the other day when I was talking to him. Back then, we had the old locker room north end of Lambeau, and both of the locker rooms were back to back with a common wall, and then the showers are right there. Whatever. Time a lot of us took the showers in Green Bay, all the hot water was gone, and and we heard that a lot of the Cowboys, they were upset they lost the game, and some of them were they left the hot water running in the showers to get rid of the hot water, so they could hear us celebrating next door. I said, whose idea? I said, whose idea was that? He said that was Meredith's.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh
He said
man.
his dad, I don't know if it's true or not, but he said that was Dandy's idea to let the hot water run. So.
I guess after a heartbreaking loss like that, a little spite is all you can do at that point.
Yeah, yeah, because they lost a tough one the year before too. Down in Dallas in a championship game.
And now,
Yeah.
how did you guys celebrate? I mean, it's freezing cold out. What did you guys do after a big win in Green Bay when it was that frigid out?
Well, at that time, of course you stayed in the locker room as long as you could, but Green Bay was a little bit different. The players as a whole, we kind of celebrated, as a group, as a team with the families and friends and that type of thing. Probably a little bit different than today, but yeah, but everybody we were pretty happy after that game, and we went out and celebrated pretty much, as a group, as a team. Of course, Vince Lombardi liked that too. He liked guys that would go socialize after practice, spend some time together with friends and family, socializing, off the field. He thought there'd be it'd be a closer, special bond if more players did that. And he spent some time with guys and, their families and stuff and whatever, and just, get to know them a little bit. You might lay down and maybe do a little more, a little extra, for your teammate, your good friend or whatever, come Sunday afternoon.
Gotcha. Yeah, there's no, and I played high school football, and there's no bond and camaraderie like being part of a football team. So that's great to hear.
Yeah, and that's why everybody says pretty much the same thing. Even Kramer said yesterday. People are asking what do you miss about it? Yeah, well, you miss the you miss the friendships, you miss the camaraderie, and I always tell people, you miss that electricity that you get into. You get into a huddle in a game, and there's a certain bond or electricity that. It's hard to duplicate anyplace else.
Right.
And the Packers have the Bears this week, and my best games when I was a Packer always seemed to be against the Bears, especially down in Chicago, and we used to play them down in Wrigley Field back in the day, and that's always a special rivalry, the oldest rivalry in professional football. And one of the biggest thrills of my life was it was pregame warm-ups. I think it was in '67, and we're warming up there, and I think we're Bart and I and Zeke were throwing out in the north end. We're pregame warm-ups, and the Bears are out there. They're throwing down to the south end zone, and Coach Lombardi and George Hallis are like two peacocks kind of standing around the 50-yard line, and then I threw a pass, warm-ups, and Coach called me over and said, Darling, so I came over and he introduced me to George Hallis. He wanted me to meet George Hallis. To be introduced to a legend by a legend on the 50-yard line in Wrigley Field. I mean, moments like that I'll never forget.
Wow. Interesting, because it seems like you were just, surrounded by legends your whole football career.
Well, yeah. When going to Green Bay, that's right. And to this day, I can't not understand why Jerry Kramer is not in the Hall of Fame. You talk about a huge mistake, and decision by the NFL Hall of Fame not to have a guy like Kramer in the Hall of Fame it's just mind-boggling to me. There's no excuse for it.
It seems unfair that a lot of guys from that era, your time and a little before, that are certainly deserving of the Hall of Fame. It's just, I guess at this point, it just seems that they're overlooked. There's a lot of guys that are deserving that just aren't getting that recognition, huh?
Yeah. Well, yeah, a lot of guys are, and I think there's always some, you hate to say it, but there's always some political, overtones or undertones about it or whatever. To me, there's, everybody can name two or three guys in the Hall of Fame they feel that shouldn't be there, and there's two or three that should be there. So I guess, but after playing with these guys, I know, if anybody deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, it's a guy like Jerry Kramer, and for him not to be there, I just go, come on, guys got to get with the program. So, yeah.
Well, hopefully they will get it together and rectify the wrongdoings of these slighted players.
Right.
Now, Don, you mentioned your best game, which I read a little bit about, was a start versus the Bears, and I really loved that story when I said you were serving in the military, right? And you came back for that game.
Yeah, in fact, I was just telling Jerry that game was 48 years ago yesterday.
Wow.
And I said, Jerry, you remember what? And he says, and that was also Jerry Kramer's last game as a Packer. He retired shortly thereafter. Yeah, I was in the military all that year and got out a couple of weeks earlier and practiced 7 or 8, 10 days maybe, and and had a reserve meeting, up in Milwaukee on that Saturday night. And I practiced a little bit with the team and then I drove down to Chicago, got there about 2:30 in the morning, checked into the Drake Hotel, I believe, and got up the next morning, Sunday morning, went down to breakfast, didn't, no idea I was going to play, ran into Coach Lombardi. He was the GM at the time, but he was still coaching everything. He was still, calling all the shots. Ran into Coach Lombardi and he says, Donald, he said, what time did you get in last night? I told him 2:00, not 2:30, And he says, he made a comment like, well, did you bring your uniform? And I said, no, sir. And he said, well, I'm thinking about suiting you up. I thought he was joking. So we went to a team meeting after that. And Bart had broken ribs. So he said, I'm activating Don, deactivating Bart and, activating me and stuff or whatever. Oh, great. This is fantastic, So, we go out there and, I'm the third string quarterback, didn't think I was going to play at all. And all of a sudden, excuse me, Zeke gets hurt into the first. That's a big game for the Bears. If they win, they go to the playoffs instead of the Vikings that year. Big game for the Bears. They have to win it. Wow. And, so, at the end of the first quarter, and Zeke comes off the field and they turn to me and they yell at, they point to me and they go, I go, what? I'm saying to myself, Eddie, what are you thinking? What are you, So I remember I go in the series, I go in that game and I'm I don't know what I'm doing. So in the first series, I think I lost, 10, 13 yards, something like that. But because he's yelled at me, calling me tin horn and greenhorn and stuff or whatever. And then anyway, after that, I said, oh, what the heck? Let's just lock and load and let it go. And then, started, had it, one of those games where everything's working. I got through I ended up being NFL Offensive Player of the Week, I think.
Oh, wow.
We beat them by 1 point, 28-27. And, I got the game ball. I remember Forrest Gregg was our captain. He gave me the game ball after the game. And everybody, I think Coach Lombardi shook my hand or hugged me 3 times after that game. He was so proud. Because, and the ironic thing about it, it would happen to be the 100th meeting of the Packers and the Bears, the centennial meeting of the oldest rivalry in professional football. I get the game ball. I have a heck of a game, and my name is not even in the program.
Oh, wow. Oh, man.
And because I've been in the Army all year, and I was kind of, so. But anyway, and that was another moment I never forget. Yeah,
you get to stick it to the rival Bear. That's great.
Yeah. And then it wasn't too long after that, Coach Lombardi decided, to move on to the Redskins, and then anyway, so I was back to I was hoping I'd play a little bit more, and Bart's a legend. I knew I'd never play up there. Bart's going to play, and nor should I, because he's such a great guy, both on the field and off the field. So, and then Coach Lombardi at one time, it was a little different back then, free agency, and contacted me through a third party, and wanted to know if I'd consider playing my option out and coming down, which not too many people did back then that day. He wanted me to maybe consider coming down and backing up Sonny Jurgensen, the Redskins, and backing up Sonny and then taking over after Sonny retired. And I said, sure, I would definitely consider that. So I go to Bart and talk to Bart briefly, and I said, just between you and me, how many more years you want to play? You play? And Bart said, oh, at least 3, maybe 5 more. I'm going, doggone it, man. So anyway, I kind of committed to go down and play my option out in Green Bay, and then I got, hurt my knee again in 1970 or whatever, but, and then Vince passes away, and so that deal kind of went away, and then they fired Bankston and brought in Dan Devine, and Devine heard I was unhappy and wanted to leave, so he got rid of me and traded me to Denver. I came out here and started, and tore my knee up and my shoulder out here, my first year out here, and then the rest is history. So it was kind of a backup after that for sure. But I was good at one time before I got hurt. But it's when you play with a guy named Bart Starr, it's kind of hard to play very much. And then I always tell people most of my career I backed up future Hall of Fame quarterbacks, Bart Starr and Dan Fouts. So it's called being at the wrong place at the wrong time.
Right. Geez.
So,
oh man. Now, Don, do you ever go back to Green Bay?
Yeah, I hadn't been back there in a couple of years. I'm going to go back next year for sure. Jerry goes back fairly often, so I'm going to start getting back there more often myself or whatever. But yeah, I'm going to start getting back there a little bit more. Of course, I try to catch Green Bay if they come out. I live in Colorado and Denver, and if they come out here, I definitely catch them here, or maybe even somewhere on the West Coast if I happen to be. I do some traveling and stuff with the people I'm dealing with now. It's called Premier Regenerative Stem Cell Institute, and where you do your own adult stem cells and take your own stem cells and help your body heal itself. We've worked on a lot of ball players the last 3 or 4 years around the country, both current and former NFL players, Major League Baseball players, National Hockey League players, and it helps them avoid invasive surgeries or replacements. So,
oh wow,
so I'm doing a lot of that now too. So I do some traveling around the country, talking to athletic groups and colleges and stuff like that too. So,
well, that's amazing. That's really cool stuff.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of a leading edge of and the stuff they're discovering about this is amazing. It helps Parkinson's, MS. It's just amazing what some of this stuff does. I even got some of the old former Bronco players out here that's even growing their hair back.
Really?
Yeah. So then they have bald, so they're so vain they want to grow their hair back. So.
Well, as a bald man myself, I might have to get a little more information out of you about this.
So, okay. Sounds good, my friend.
Well, Don, I really appreciate you coming on. This is great. Now, listen, I just want to ask you one more question real quick, or 2 more questions, actually. I came to Green Bay a lot, and I was at that Green Bay Packer-Dallas Cowboy playoff game. Do you think that was a catch by Des Bryant?
That was a catch. In the old days, that was a catch, no doubt about it.
All right, I'll leave the listeners with this. Don Horn, who's your Super Bowl prediction this season?
Oh gosh, you would ask me that. I'd love to see the Pack, run the table and maybe back into it. But right now, I'm going to say off the top of my head, I'm going to say New England and either Detroit or Seattle.
Wow. All right.
Is that off the cuff or what? And
that's respectable.
Yeah, and that's I love to see Green Bay, and if Green Bay can play like they did last week and get the breaks and stuff, I mean that's the best I've seen Green Bay play in months. Everything, they were clicking on all cylinders against the Seahawks. I mean, everything was going right, and I just hope they can still they save some of that and have that same motivation and energy and emotion. This week against Chicago, and then of course against Minnesota, and then the Lions too. But
yeah, we'll see how it plays out. Sure, will be exciting.
Yep, it will either way. But I'm always pulling for the Pack. We're going. I want to be down in Houston for the Super Bowl, and then like even talking to Jerry, he says, we probably won't go to the game on Sunday down there. The only reason, and we would if the Packers are playing in the game, but if the Packers aren't playing, then we probably won't go to the game. But we're going to be down there, so
just enjoy the atmosphere.
Yeah, exactly. See everybody and partake in everything. And okay, sounds good.
Well, Don, thank you so much. I really enjoyed our talk. I look forward to talking again. Take care, buddy.
Go Pack.